Hello, hello. We're just getting started here. Got a little bit of an issue with the first live chat and live streaming link. So if you're listening to this, please watch this live event at smartcourse.io/ADHD Summit live kick off. That is the best place to watch it, because we also have a Google form on that page that we would love for people to fill out with any questions that they have, and hopefully we can address those live. So if you're listening in, go ahead and let me know in the chat where you're listening in from, and we'll just do that while people come in. All right, so it's currently 4:15 p.m. ET, and we're probably going to get going sometime around, let's say, like, give people 5-10 minutes to come in, so around like 4:20 or 4:25. Also, we have Alex from Smart Course manning the chat, so please interact with Alex in the chat if you're watching on YouTube, although again, highly recommend you watch it on our website so that you can fill out that Google form. But it can be fun on the YouTube chat with like the super chat feature and stuff like that, if any of you are interested in that. All right, so people are starting to trickle in. For everyone who's in and watching right now, can you go ahead and just post in the chat just where you're listening in from, so I know that you're here? Or if you're watching on the website, then go ahead and submit that form so that we know that you're all able to hear me correctly. And Alex, go ahead and post in the chat if you can hear me. Just let me know if everything's coming in all right. Okay, cool. So I can see Alex is here and interacting. Great. Okay, great. Looks like we're ready to go. Maybe we'll give it another 3 minutes or 2 minutes. So for everyone else, while you're here, to just start posting. And let us know what you're excited about with this summit. All right. So we seem to have gotten quite a bit of responses already so far for the form here. Very excited to go through those. So we've got a couple of people in the chat here: Heidi Fag, Jeff Spencer, Misamil. I can't pronounce that user. I'm sorry. Carla. Okay, Carla here. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to give it just another 2 minutes here. It's 4:18. Just wait for everyone to come on in. And Alex, if you can, after you've posted to YouTube, just to let everyone know where to watch and listen. Well, actually, you know what? I can just check this here. All right. Yeah, everything's good. If everyone who's listening currently, let us know if you're new to Smart Course, or if you've used any of our products, or if you've seen our YouTube channel in the past. Love to hear if there are, like, how many people are new and how many people are existing customers or fans. So Jeff looks like he's most interested in Ned and Melissa. I'm assuming that's either Ned as in Edward Hollowell, or Ned Johnson, or who is that? And then also Melissa, I'm assuming Melissa Orlov from ADHDmarriage.com. All right. Well, it's 4:20. Awesome. Yeah, Melissa Orlov is great. It's 4:20, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And hopefully people trickle in as we go. Either way, we've got quite the event for you this year. So for everyone who doesn't know, this is a live stream about the ADHD Summit. And the ADHD Summit is a virtual summit on ADHD throughout the lifespan, where we bring together the world-leading experts on ADHD in 5 major support categories over 5 days to cover pretty much anything and everything any caregiver of a child with ADHD needs to know. So a couple of quick facts for people who aren't aware. First of all, just in the US alone, there are around 8 million kids with ADHD. So quite a few, and the number is growing very quickly, and has been for the past 15 to 20 years. And there's a lot of problems around ADHD. I mean, so many different problems. And so it's very complex to address all of them. But just to give you an idea, the divorce rate for parents of neurotypical kids, for parents of kids with ADHD is twice as high as that of neurotypical kids. The go-to resource for parents, which is generally pediatricians, around 50% of them fully admit to not knowing how to treat ADHD specifically, which is obviously a huge, huge problem. 99% of gen ed teachers are not taught how to help kids with different needs. I mean, they receive 1 hour of training in their entire career, and that covers like every special need, so it's not actually effective. And as you can imagine, all of these underlying issues have second order effects that are really detrimental to the rest of the world and the economy as a whole, because what happens is you've got these kids in school who aren't able to learn effectively, and because they're not able to learn effectively, they're not able to get into a good college, or they struggle to get into a good college. And then because of that, they struggle to get a good job to pay off the huge amounts of college debt that they've now taken on to get into college. And on top of that, they struggle to get a job and then maintain that job. And all of this is unnecessary, but obviously, not being able to pay off that debt has all kinds of effects on the world economy as a whole, because you have this huge pool of very creative, motivated, driven kids who sometimes make the best entrepreneurs ever, that are just not able to reach that potential when they really should be. So anyway, all of those things are things that we at Smart Course are trying to tackle. And we're starting with kids with ADHD because, or especially kids with special needs as a whole, because they're the most underrepresented, the most underserved, the most misunderstood in the education system today. And our thinking is, if we can solve the education system for the kids who are the most disadvantaged first, then it should be much easier to be able to solve it for every child in the world who has access to the internet over the next 15 to 20 years, knowing that space companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic and NASA are trying to cover the entire planet with access to the internet for free in the next 15 to 20 years. So our goal is, by that time, we want an education system that's fully online, adaptable, individualized, personalized to each person's needs, and effective. And so all you would need is an internet connection. And if that's free and you're able to access a high quality, effective education, just imagine the impact, right? We could get rid of poverty. We could get rid of hunger. We can allow people anywhere in the world who struggles to educate themselves, empower themselves, and build the lives that they want to live for free. And that's a vision that really inspires us, that we want to build towards. So anyway, like zooming back in from that crazy huge goal is just ADHD. And so this ADHD Summit is going to be starting tomorrow, February 1st, 2021, and going until February 5th, 2021. And we have got 5 days packed with tons and tons of information from over 60 of the world-leading experts on ADHD. So pretty much anyone who's made a name for themselves in this space will be speaking at this summit. And the reason we did it that way, and why it's so important to have it split up, is there are so many specific problems that are covered throughout the lifespan, and each day focuses on one of them, so that at least, like, we can make an attempt with some of the best people in the world who could ever be solving this problem to really solve it once and for all in that category. So for example, day one, we're going to be covering parenting and executive functions. Day two, we're going to be covering academics, accommodations, and homework. Day three, we're going to be covering relationships, and that's with your family, that's marriage relationships, parent-child, child-sibling, and then your relationship to the school as well, as it's just as important. Day four, we're going to be covering the tougher side of ADHD and all the comorbidities that can be seen with it, and as well as how to cope with them. Day five, we're going to be covering medications, alternative treatments, and the ADHD brain. So obviously, each of those categories is super important. And I'm going to break down each of them and why that is. So just as like a quick overview, here's a taste of what you'll discover by joining the free ADHD Summit presented by SmartCourse. So first, you're going to get a behind-the-scenes look at how Dr. Edward Ned Hollowell presents the concept of VAST, or a positive alternative to ADHD. VAST is an acronym that stands for Variable Attention Stimulus Trait, and that's essentially looking at ADHD as much more of a trait than a disorder, because everyone technically has ADHD to a certain degree, but you're really only diagnosed formally with ADHD if it affects your life significantly in a negative way. But most people struggle with executive functions. It just depends on to what degree. And so VAST is actually a really, really smart way of looking at this problem, because first of all, it removes a lot of the stigma. Second of all, it allows for everybody to be considered having VAST. And so instead of people being labeled as ADHD or not, it's just everyone has a variable attention stimulus trait, and where do you fall on that spectrum as a human being? Next, we're going to be covering the exact in-depth strategies legendary coach Dr. Peg Dawson uses to address the 12 most prevalent executive function deficits. Everything you need to know about ADHD medications from the best in the world, like Dr. William Bill Dodson and Dr. Dan Shapiro. how to positively parent consistently using Dr. Ross Green's CPS model, or the collaborative and proactive solutions model, why Leslie Josell's personal homework profile tool has such amazing results for thousands of middle schoolers and students with ADHD, the best tools and resources to get the best accommodations, IEP or 504 plan in place for your child, exactly how to address the 10 biggest and most common fears parents have for their children with ADHD using tried and true strategies, the 5 most essential lessons for parents to keep in mind as taught by Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster of ImpactADHD.com, as well as Dr. Sharon Saline, why Melissa Orlov's approach to marriage and family relationships counseling has saved thousands of families from divorce, exactly how Dr. Conchata Dakarya, a legendary clinical neuropsychologist and diagnostician, as well as Dr. Paul Yellen, diagnose ADHD and accompanying disorders so that you can advocate for your child with hard data. And then how the field's thought leaders like Dr. Stefan Hinshaw, Dr. Sam Goldstein, and Dr. Thomas Brown think about ADHD so that you can teach your kids to stand on their own and be more independent. So that's just a big overview, but I'm going to break down each and every single one of these. But before that, I just want to share some really amazing testimonials from 2 of our experts who really meant a lot to me. So one of them is from Elaine Taylor-Klaus from ImpactADHD.com, which is one of the largest blogs on ADHD ever. And she says that the conversations are both practical and socially/emotionally impactful. This one's worth catching for sure. When you get the world's leading thought leaders on kids, school, and ADHD in one place, the results are magnifying. When you target the conversation on kids, the conversations are both practical and socially emotionally impactful. And when you add in an excellent interviewer like Adrian Harrison, you have a recipe for a particularly excellent online summit. This one's worth catching for sure. Another one was from Leslie Josell. She's the principal of Order Out of Chaos, a speaker, coach, and the creator of the award-winning Academic Planner, a tool for time management. And she said, as an ADHD coach for students who also provides coaching for parents, I hear all day long how frustrated and confused parents are when it comes to treating children with ADHD. They are looking for real guidance, real strategies, and real answers. This summit provides that and more. With its top-notch speakers, attendees are going to get all the guidance and support they need. I'm thrilled to be a small part of it. So anyway, that was really awesome. And we've got so many more from experts, which is really humbling, and makes us really proud at the same time that we've gotten people who have been experts and leaders in this space for so long to endorse us in such a short period of time. I mean, we started in January of 2020, right before the pandemic, and that obviously just accelerated our growth enormously because everyone in the entire world had to move to online learning and teletherapy in a matter of months. And we were just like perfectly positioned for that. So really, really great timing. And we handpicked all of these world-class ADHD experts who are at the top of their field. They've helped countless families coping with ADHD throughout their lives. And they've got over 300 years of experience in the field between them. Despite their busy schedules, each of these speakers jumped on board for this event and promised to teach their best stuff because they don't want you to go through the same mistakes and setbacks that they made. And they know that the right strategy or insight properly applied can change everything. So all I can say is you're in for days of jam-packed value. So let's jump into each day and each speaker and what they're going to be talking about. So day 1, starting tomorrow, in the parenting and executive function support category, we've got Dr. Sam Goldstein, who's an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Utah School of Medicine. He's the clinical director of the Neurology Learning and Behavior Center. His talk is understanding and nurturing the forces that shape the life outcome for youth with ADHD. For the past 40 years, the center has provided assessment and treatment for over 10,000 children and teens with neurological developmental and emotional disorders. Dr. Goldstein has authored over 50 books, as well as over 36 book chapters and 30 research articles. Among his publications is the first textbooks on evaluating and treating youth with ADHD, as well as the first textbook for professionals devoted to the assessment and treatment of ADHD in adults. His research has focused on resilience and outcome for youth with a broad range of childhood disorders. He's also co-authored 6 neuropsychological tests, and he currently serves as editor-in-chief of the Journal of Attention Disorders, one of the top 25% of science journals worldwide. He also sits on the editorial boards of 6 peer-reviewed journals. So Dr. Sam Goldstein, along with Dr. Russell Barkley, are really like top of the field. They've been, pioneers and really helped define the space altogether. Next, we have Dr. Peg Dawson. She's a prolific best-selling author and leading authority in the field of ADHD. Her talk is entitled The 12 Most Common Executive Function Deficits and How to Turn Them into Executive Skills. There's nothing more frustrating than watching your bright, talented son or daughter struggle with everyday tasks like finishing homework, putting away toys, or following instructions at school. Your smart but scattered child might also have trouble coping with disappointment or managing anger. Nonetheless, there is a lot you can do to help. The latest research in child development shows that many kids who have the brain and heart to succeed lack or lag behind in crucial executive skills, which are the fundamental habits of mind required for getting organized, staying focused, and controlling impulses or emotions. In this talk, Peg Dawson will share her knowledge on executive functions and teach you easy-to-follow steps to identify your child's strengths and weaknesses, use activities and techniques proven to boost specific skills, and problem-solve daily routines. All these small changes can add up to crucial improvements. Next is Dr. George McCloskey. He's the professor and director of school psychology research of the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine and holds diplomate status with the American Academy of Pediatric Neuropsychology. He has over 35 years of experience in test development, teaching, research and assessment, and intervention work with a wide range of clients. He's also an amazing speaker, really fun to talk to. His talk is Helping Adolescents with ADHD Learn How to Improve Self-Regulation. The impact of ADHD on adolescent brain development, specific bridging strategies for improving self-regulation, the self-regulation difficulties typically exhibited by adolescents diagnosed with ADHD, the impact that ADHD can have on self-determination and self-realization, the executive control intervention continuum for helping adolescents with ADHD with orienting, external control, bridging, and internal self-regulation. Next is Dr. Ross Greene, also a legend in the field, author of the well-known books, The Explosive Child and Lost at School, and the originator of the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions model, founder of the nonprofit organization Lives in the Balance. So his talk is Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, Teaching the Skills on the Better Side of Human Nature. Dr. Green's presentation will explore current research regarding collaborative and proactive solutions, or the CPS model, and how it can foster a collaborative partnership between adults and kids and engage kids in solving the problems that affect their lives. We will discuss and practice ways to solve your child's problems collaboratively so they can be fully invested in solving the problems. The solutions are more durable and over time increase their confidence in learning the skills they were lacking all along. By the end of it, you will have the resources and tools needed to implement the CPS model for your student with ADHD. And one thing that's really important about Dr. Greene that I'll mention is that he says this all the time, kids do well if they can. And so if you're a parent or you're a teacher and you're watching this and you're just like trying to figure out what's going on with the kids that you care for, and it just seems like they're really defiant or that they are really struggling, it's because they are, right? Like they can't do well, because if they could, they would. And so a lot of times when they can't, it's very scary. And so they'll react, right? I mean, no one likes to be told over and over again that they can't clean their room properly, or that they don't do their homework on time, or that they keep getting bad grades on tests. Like, that's obviously very frustrating. And if that's all they hear and they can't do better and they've tried and tried, then it's going to come out as defiance. And so that's why it's really important to remember that kids will do well if they can. And so as a caregiver, it's our responsibility to find how to help them. And whether that's connecting them with the right experts or empowering yourself, educating yourself so that they can do it. It's really important. Next is Jody Sleeper Triplet. She is the recipient of the 2016 Chad Hall of Fame Award and the 2017 Founders Award from the ADHD Coaches Organization. She is also the president of the Association of Coach Training Organizations, or ACTO. Her talk is helping parents get into a coaching mindset. And I thought this was really important. I wanted Jody to do this because she's like, known as one of the most legendary coaches on ADHD ever. And if there's anyone who's going to teach parents on how to become better coaches instead of just parents, it would be her. Now, it's not always the right move for parents to become coaches, right? Sometimes parents just need to be parents, and sometimes you just need someone else to take on that role, because you don't want to conflate your relationship or your responsibility as a parent with your child with you as a coach. But that being said, having the skills of a coach as a parent is still super, super helpful, because it's going to help with your parenting a lot more. So anyway, that's why we put this together. The description is that parenting preteens and teens is a challenging undertaking. This is a stage of emerging independence and pushback against parental involvement. Parents want their children to succeed, and their definition of success may differ from their preteens and teens. Increasing overwhelm and anxiety for those with ADHD and executive function challenges, shifting to a coaching mindset can help both parents and their children to communicate more effectively and with less stress. So in this session, Jody Sleeper Triplet will share basic coaching skills, including acknowledgement, active listening, powerful questioning, and brainstorming to improve your communication with your teens. Learn how to breathe deeply and give your teens the space to learn, make choices, experience disappointment, and then bounce back to discover options and opportunities. Shifting to a coaching mindset takes practice, strategies, and patience. And Jody will teach us how to have a better relationship with your teen. Next is Dr. J. Russell, or Russ Ramsey. He's the co-founder and co-director of the University of Pennsylvania's Adult ADHD Treatment and Research Program, and an associate professor of clinical psychology in the Department of Psychiatry in the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. He also has authored many publications. His talk is entitled A Cognitive Behavioral Informed Approach to Help Middle Schoolers with ADHD. And some of these talks are focused on middle school, specifically because middle school is one of the, if not the toughest period for kids with ADHD ever. And there's many reasons for that. You're going through puberty, you're going from elementary school to now having, where you had like one teacher and the stakes were not super high, to now having multiple teachers, needing to switch classrooms. So organization becomes much, much more difficult. So, things like the executive skills needed need to develop, and they haven't developed yet in order to just keep up. That added on with all the hormones of puberty and the fact that social life is becoming a lot more judgmental or niche or difficult for kids with ADHD is a huge issue, because they tend to be around 3 years behind in a sense of maturity from their peers. And so a lot of these we wanted to make sure covered middle school years specifically, just because if you can do really well in middle school, you can eventually do really well in high school, and eventually that's going to get you into a good college, or so that you can get a good job. Plus, it's a really great time for you to experiment, because although the stakes are higher than elementary school, they're not high by any means, right? They're really just years that are meant to teach those students to be able to do well in high school, where those grades do matter, because that is going to have an impact on either the job that you get or the college that you get into. So anyway, Dr. Ramsey's talk is one of the frustrating aspects of being a parent of a middle schooler with ADHD is the helpless feeling of being less able to step in and actually do things to help their child manage the many demands of life at this age. Tasks such as school, chores, family, and social life, and others increasingly, but not totally, fall on the shoulders of the students. And that's what he'll be covering. Next is Michael Delman and Sean Potts. So this is a really fun and interesting talk that we had. So first of all, Michael's an award-winning educator and entrepreneur. In 2006, he founded Beyond Booksmart, which has grown into the world's largest executive function coaching company. In 2018, he published his first book, Your Kid's Gonna Be Okay, Building the Executive Function Skills Your Child Needs in the Age of Attention. And Sean Potts is a successful young professional with ADHD and one of Michael Delman's employees. And Sean used to be one of Michael's coaching clients. And so this is a really interesting relationship to see how they grew together. And someone who, was a kid struggling severely with ADHD was able to get coached effectively and now work professionally under Michael at a company that does executive function coaching. So it was a really interesting dynamic. Love the back and forth. Really great tips. Highly recommend it. And so the talk is called Your Teen with ADHD, Unlocking Executive Function Skills for School Success. So executive function coaching expert Michael Delman shares tips and insights alongside his former coaching client, Sean Potts, a successful adult with ADHD. Learn about the connections between ADHD and executive function, ways to communicate so your team will listen, and proven tools to help high school students succeed and gain confidence. Hear firsthand perspectives from a young adult who continues to use strategies he learned from Michael that have paved the way toward his personal and professional success. Next, we've got Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster, the co-founders of one of the most successful blogs on ADHD, ImpactADHD.com, ADHD coaches, and world-renowned speakers. Their talk is entitled The Top 5 Lessons for Parenting Through the Middle School Years and How to Handle the 4 Transitional Hotspots Every Parent Goes Through. Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster teach you effective techniques on how to keep your cool and teach your kids to do the same during 4 challenging transitions that parents of kids with ADHD struggle with the most. I'm sure you all know this: mornings, homework, bedtime, and technology. There are various challenges families with children with ADHD face. However, there are 4 so-called pressure cooker challenges that tend to be the most pressing ones and tend to affect a large majority of these families. These challenges are mornings, homework, bedtime, and technology. Although they do not appear to be related, they have a lot more in common than you might think. These challenges are all about managing transitions, which can be difficult for kids with ADHD. And this session will coach you on the key strategies to manage all of these hotspots when time is short and tempers are ready to spark. Next, we have Dr. Sharon Celine. She's a clinical psychologist and award-winning author specialized in working with kids, young adults, and families living with ADHD, learning disabilities, and mental health issues. Her talk is entitled The 5 C's of ADHD Parenting and How to Deal with Anxiety During the Middle School Years. So in this presentation, Dr. Sharon Celine discusses how listening to and working with the voices of kids diagnosed with ADHD can improve family cooperation and success. Based on interviews with dozens of kids and their parents, as well as over 25 years of clinical experience, Dr. Celine provides parents, educators, and clinicians with extremely helpful insights into how kids honestly think and feel about having ADHD and how to better assist them. So she has created a unique strength-based approach called the 5 C's of ADHD parenting that helps families improve self-control, compassion, collaboration, consistency, and celebration. Her collaborative approach integrates mindfulness, cognitive therapy, and positive psychology while teaching effective skills to reduce stress in families' lives. Next is Jeff Copper. He's an ADHD coach, founder of Dig Coaching Practice, and host of Attention Talk Radio and Attention Talk Video. His talk is Your Working Memory Working? So this session, Is Your Working Memory Working? Will be part presentation, part mindfulness exercises, and part workshop. We'll define working memory and understand it in the context of ADHD and in terms we can all understand. To begin, we'll define working memory, understanding it, and gaining awareness of its impact is the first step to managing around it. Next, ADHD coach Jeff Copper will place participants in various attention exercises, creating an experience that will tax working memory. When attendees witness themselves in the moment, they will be able to clearly observe working memory as a process. Such experiential exercises will bring the insights necessary to approach how to move past the challenges in new ways. Day-to-day examples will be shared and analyzed to understand how working memory is at the root of a significant portion of most people's procrastination issues. We'll share observational techniques to help participants recognize things they already do to manage the challenges of working memory. Providing access to a variety of mindsets will help attendees control their working memory challenges more intentionally. Finally, we'll cover how managing working memory will help to purposefully reduce the procrastination of typical tasks. Participants will leave with an understanding of the role working memory has in procrastination, and ultimately why large projects are put to the side so they can end the negative cycle. Next, we've got Dr. Lara Webb, who is a clinical psychologist licensed in California, whose work has been featured in USA Today, Newsweek, The Wall Street Journal, US News and World Report, the Chicago Tribune, and more. She's the author of 6 super skills for executive functioning, tools to help teens improve focus, stay organized, and reach their goals. Brain Hacks, The Gift of ADHD, The Gift of ADHD Activity Book, The Gift of Adult ADD, The ADHD Workbook for Teens, and Listening to Depression. Her talk is entitled 6 Super Skills for Executive Functioning, Tools to Help Teens Improve Focus, Stay Organized, and Reach Their Goals. So Dr. Webb spent 15 years creating a memorable way to build executive functioning skills that's so easy a teen can use it. In fact, her recent book, The 6 Super Skills for Executive Functioning, is written for teens to read. By asking clients what was most helpful and least helpful at the end of sessions, she distilled the most helpful tools in the 6 super skills, which are finding gifts, setting goals, chunking goals into smaller steps, boosting motivation, managing mood, and finding focus. She will talk about the 5 gifts of ADHD as a starting point for finding gifts. She will talk about the why, how to set goals, and why chunking is the most powerful, easy to use tool for getting immediate boosts in motivation. She will share strategies for boosting motivation based on Miller and Rollick's motivational interviewing technique. She will share strategies for managing mood, including finding a broader perspective and flexible thinking. She will also review science-backed strategies for boosting attention. She will also offer action steps to help your team manage the virtual social world by crowding out technology with other activities, and self-talk strategies for seeing the costs of overuse of technology for entertainment. And the last talk for day 1 on parenting executive functions is a really awesome talk as well, with Elizabeth Sauter and Julian Sauter. So Elizabeth is the founder of Make Social Learning Stick, the co-owner of Communication Works, co-author of 2 popular children's books, Whole Body Listening Larry at Home and Whole Body Listening Larry at School. She is a collaborative trainer for zones of regulation. Her son, Julian Sauter Savala, is a current high school student with ADHD. Her talk is titled, It Takes Ripples to Make Waves, the Bottom-Up Approach to Social Emotional Learning. As we are focused on supporting high schoolers with ADHD, we know that social and emotional development is a critical element of their growth and success in life. And it is essential to think about all of the people involved in supporting each team, including the home and school. In this interactive workshop, Elizabeth and Julian will share a bottom-up approach to supporting social and emotional learning using the 3 C's: care, co-regulation, and communication. They will dive into each of these and provide a perspective from 3 aspects and point of views that are most important in a high schooler's life: home, school, and self. We will also practice some of the evidence-based tools together, and you will walk away with strategies to implement yourself with the high schooler that you love and support. Now, the reason I wanted to put this together is the same, very similar with Michael Delman and Sean Potts, is that you're actually going to be able to hear the perspective of a current high schooler with ADHD and his parent, his mother, who is also a coach. And so that's like a really useful perspective to see, not only because you'll be able to relate to it for your own child, but for your child to see another high schooler that's actually thriving with ADHD and like how that happened as real proof that this is possible. All right, so that's all day 1. Jam-packed. Even just day 1 is amazing. But now let's jump into day 2. And actually, before I do that, let me just check in the chat real quick, see if there's anything that I should be looking into. Okay. All right, so I think we're good. Alex is taking man in the chat like a boss. Love it. All right, so day 2 is academics, accommodations, and homework. So starting off with huge heavy hitter, absolute legend in the field, Dr. Donald Destler, who's also an advisor for SmartCourse. And that was right after our talk. I was like, I need you to advise this company. You are awesome. So Don Destler is the Williamson Family Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Special Education, as well as the founder and former director of the Center for Research on Learning at the University of Kansas. His talk is entitled Empowering Adolescents to Thrive Academically and Socially. As we know, some of the symptoms evidenced by adolescents with ADHD can greatly affect how well they learn, remember, and use subject matter material. However, mounting evidence shows when students are taught specific learning strategies, their ability to learn and use subject matter content increases dramatically. Likewise, there are specific instructional routines, content teachers can use to help focus attention on critical facts and concepts to enhance student learning. This workshop will explore the following topics in an interactive way. A, why specific learning strategies used by students and instructional routines used by content teachers can foster increased learning for students with ADHD. B, examples of what kinds of specific learning strategies have been shown to make a big difference in how students learn, remember, and use new subject matter material. Additionally, the use of learning strategies to learn important social skills will be discussed. C, examples of what kinds of routines called content enhancement routines can be used by content teachers to teach critical content to classrooms of academically diverse students so all students can learn that content. And D, how learning strategies should be taught to students so they can be used independently and effectively by students, and how content enhancement routines should be incorporated into the planning, teaching, and evaluating of critical subject matter being taught. Opportunities to think about and apply how these strategies and routines apply to your specific teaching situation will be considered. So if you're a teacher or you want to learn how teachers should better teach to kids with ADHD, highly recommend this talk. Next is Dr. Susan Baum, also an absolute legend. She's the director of the 2E Center for Research and Professional Development at Bridges Academy and provost of the Bridges Graduate School for Cognitive Diversity in Education. She's the 2010 recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, the 2015 Distinguished Professional Alumni Award from the Neg School of Education, and the Alexenia Baldwin Award from National Association for Gifted Students in 2019. So 2E stands for twice exceptional. So that's bright students with ADHD. Her talk, what are the issues? So twice exceptional as in they have ADHD and they're also gifted. So this talk centers around those students. So Dr. Baum will use stories of students to provide an insightful understanding of the workings and minds of bright students with ADHD. She will share the confusions that arise when interpreting behavior with such students, when attention drifts in the classroom because of the pace of learning, with the overall lack of novelty, and with a curriculum that is too convergent. Dr. Baum will also share strategies that will support the integration of the talents the ADHD/gifted mind brings to the learning environment that have been shown to engage youngsters and increase their productivity. She will ask you to consider what you can do to support these students using a positive lens that asks the question, what can this youngster do, rather than identifying him or her by what they cannot do. Welcome to a provocative yet practical session. Next is Ned Johnson. And I absolutely loved talking with Ned Johnson. He's the founder of Prep Matters, has written about education and parenting for the New York Times, the Telegraph, US News and World Report, and the Washington Post. He is the co-author of Conquering the SAT, How Parents Can Help Teens Overcome the Pressure and Succeed, as well as the national bestseller, The Self-Driven Child, The Science and Sense of Giving Your Kids More Control Over Their Lives, alongside Dr. William R. Stixrud, who we also have speaking later on in the summit. So his talk is Tutoring for Students with ADHD, What Great Tutors Do and How to Find Them. The reason I put this together, obviously, is most students with ADHD are going to require some external help academically, and having a tutor who understands the needs of students with ADHD is way more effective than just using any random tutor. So across any level of education that involves test taking is extremely stressful, whether they're frequent class assessments or yearly standardized tests. Students want to do well, but test anxiety and challenges managing ADHD symptoms make academic achievement incredibly difficult. This is why having an academic tutor and a personalized education plan can help set your student up for success and equip them with the strategies and confidence to handle their academic obstacles. In this session, Ned will explain what makes a good tutor and how you can find one. You'll finish the session with a better understanding of the various challenges tutors can help your child overcome, as well as how to find the tutor to best help your student with ADHD. And just before continuing on, if you're still listening at this point, you should know at the very end, we're going to be sharing an exclusive offer just for people who are listening live. So definitely stay on till the end if you want to take advantage of that. All right, so next we've got two professors. I saw somewhere in the chat, someone was asking about Landmark College. So this would address that. We have Dr. Manju Banerjee and Dr. Adam Laylor. So Dr. Banerjee is Vice President of Educational Research and Innovation at Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, with 35 years of experience in the field of learning disabilities. Dr. Banerjee is on the executive board of the Learning Disability Association of America, professional advisory board member to the National Center on Learning Disabilities, and Learning Disability Association of America. Dr. Adam Laylor received his PhD in educational psychology from the University of Connecticut with more than 10 years of experience in higher ed administration. He has served on the board of the Council for Exceptional Children's Division on Career Development and Transition. His recent work focuses on the transition of students with disabilities to and within higher education. And this talk is called Online Learning for Students Who Learn Differently. What do we currently know and how can we become better? Now, obviously, this is super relevant while the pandemic is still happening and everyone is forced to learn online, and I'm sure struggling with dramatically. So definitely watch that if you're struggling with online learning. Nowadays, online or remote learning is the new normal for most students in higher education, as are all learning to pivot quickly to meet the current need, to meet the current demands. Some are better prepared than others. It is often believed that the online platform is not user-friendly to students who learn differently. Yet for the past 7 years, Landmark College has been offering online courses to high school students with executive function challenges as part of their successful online dual enrollment program. Using our knowledge of LD, student profiles, and experience with online learning, this session will share information on how educators can develop online courses to meet the needs of all students. And I can attest to this because it's the exact same thing that we do at SmartCourse. There are ways to make online learning compelling for any kind of specific user. It's just a matter of research. Next is Dr. Claudia Rinaldi, who is such a boss. She's the professor and chair of the education program at LaSalle University. She's a 3-year endowed position awarded for excellence in teaching and community impact. She serves on the board of the National Center for Learning Disabilities and as an expert for understood.org and the National Center for Intensive Interventions. Her talk is entitled Navigating and Advocating for Effective Special Education Services, a Primer for Parents Partnering with Schools. Dr. Claudia's presentation will provide parents with guidance on how to partner with special education IEP teams to advocate for their children's educational rights. She will explain the benefits of asking about the school's use of a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, framework, and how it integrates with special education services. The session will also highlight an effective special education referral process, including an ecological assessment practice, interpretation of tests, connecting the results to instructional planning, and advocating for adaptation, accommodations, and assistive technology. We will discuss how different types of assessments work to inform instructional planning. Parents will be provided with sample questions for the eligibility and the IEP team to ensure that the instructional decision matches the student's current level of performance. Really, really important to get the right accommodations in place, and doing it the way that Claudia recommends is highly recommended. All right, next is Dr. George DuPaul. He's a professor of school psychology and associate dean of research at the College of Education, Lehigh University. He has extensive experience providing clinical services to children with ADHD and their families, as well as consulting with a variety of school districts regarding the management of students with ADHD. His talk is entitled Understanding and Promoting the Transition to Middle School for Parents with ADHD. And again, what we were talking about earlier, transitions are so important for kids with ADHD because they're very, very difficult. Because you can get all your systems in place, you can realize like all the different supports that you need to compensate for or enhance your executive skills, and then boom, everything changes and you have to start over again. And that's why like we wanted to make sure like we're covering all of these transitional periods throughout the lifespan. So are you equipped to support students with ADHD as they transition to middle school? This session will summarize research on primary and secondary outcomes for students with ADHD, as well as interventions aimed at supporting students with ADHD's transition to middle school. Attendees will learn strategies to strengthen middle school programs and services, common documentation requirements in secondary school settings, and tips for helping students with ADHD adjust academically and socially to middle school. Dr. DuPaul will cover different study skills, what homework looks like from the teacher's perspective, and organizational skills for your kid's locker, desk, book bag, and binders. Next is a colleague of Dr. DuPaul, Dr. Stephen Evans. Dr. Evans is a distinguished professor in the Department of Psychology at Ohio University and a licensed clinical psychologist in Ohio. His research interests are school-based treatments for adolescents with ADHD. His talk is entitled, How to Help Adolescents with ADHD Succeed in Middle and High School. So adolescents with ADHD frequently experience problems at school, completing work, getting along with others, performing well on tests and quizzes, and following school rules. For some youth, these problems lead to school dropout, academic failure, substance use, and delinquency. Improving a student's social and academic success at school can change an adolescent's trajectory and reduce the risk of poor outcomes. So the interventions needed to improve the outcomes for these adolescents are available, but too often they are not used as people choose to reduce expectations for the student or provide other accommodations. Next, we've got Christine Kodik. Christine is a professional certified coach and the owner of CK ADHD Coaching and Consulting. She's passionate about empowering students to improve school results by managing their ADHD struggles and building on their natural strengths. Her talk is titled High School, How to Go from I'm Not Ready to Let's Do This. Christine's presentation will explore how to help your middle schooler get ready for high school through an understanding of the differences and strategies to build into the middle school years. We will discuss and practice what your student needs to know about high school and generating a strengths-based mindset and building the parent-child relationship. We will also practice how to build and maintain the parent-child relationship, which is highly important during the adolescent and teen years. And by the end of it, you will have the resources and tools needed to send your child off to high school with confidence. Next, we've got Leslie Josell, the principal of Order Out of Chaos, speaker, coach, and the creator of the award-winning academic planner and tool for time management. The talk is entitled, It's 9 p.m. Don't you have homework to do? How to make homework and fun, how to make homework fun and personalized for your child. In this session, Leslie will explain her signature process for getting students unstuck and started. She'll share the original strategy she uses with her coaching clients to help them stay on task, on time, and on track. She will give you creative ideas for planning long-term projects, boredom-busting games that strengthen the homework muscle, as well as teach you solutions to help your child learn how to prepare and plan for exams. Throughout the session, Leslie will share hands-on exercises that will teach you how to create a personal homework profile for your child so that they can learn the best practices to manage their time and get their homework done. We know that homework is one of the most requested pain points for caregivers because it's so difficult when you're a child with ADHD or a student with ADHD and you're like focusing at school all day and you finally get home and all you want to do is relax. And then first thing parents say is, hey, how much homework you got to do, or where's your homework and how can you get to that? And your brain's already fried, so you don't want to do anything but relax. So listening to that talk, plus the next one that I'm about to say, are going to help with homework. So the next is with Andrea Elrome. She's a director of creative solutions and ADHD executive function coach with over 15 years of experience working with children and parents. Her talk is entitled Managing Homework, Parent Edition, Tips, Tools, and Strategies for Helping Kids. Parents will walk away with techniques, strategies, tips, tools to better understand your child with respect to homework and the challenges that arise from homework. The various executive functions that come into play, which are motivating, planning, prioritizing, problem solving, and self-monitoring their work, will be explored. This workshop aims to reduce the daily stress of homework battles and bring calm and order to both you and your child. Next is Dr. Paul B. Yellen, who is the director of the Yellen Center for Mind and Brain and Education in New York City. He served for 5 years as the national director of the Student Success Program at the not-for-profit All Kinds of Minds Institute, and he created the Yellen Center to extend a multidisciplinary model of learning assessments and personalized learning plans to thousands of students. His talk is entitled Building IEPs and 504 Plans. As we know, there are no perfect brains, nor is there a perfect system to ensure every child is equipped with what they need to learn best and succeed. Paul will discuss the different neurodevelopmental profiles of academic and cognitive strengths and weaknesses at a particular point in time versus fixed labels, since there is a wide range of normal variations in brain development. We are rewiring our brains throughout our lives. So he will also discuss the difference between IEPs and 504 plans, as well as how to individualize each for your child and advocate for those needs based on understanding the diagnostic criteria for ADHD. And then we have another talk by Dr. Sarah Weyland, who is a special education teacher, counselor, and school psychologist for over a decade. She specializes in helping children who are struggling to learn, socialize, or navigate their emotional world, especially children with learning disabilities, ADHD, and autism. And her talk goes into 504 plans and IEPs even more. It's called How to Get an IEP or 504 Plan for Your Child and How Your School Psychologist Can Help. So as a school psychologist, she provides a really interesting perspective and useful perspective from what the school is looking for when you're having those meetings. In this interview, we're speaking with Dr. Sarah Weyland to give parents a clear understanding of the differences between an IEP and a 504 plan for middle school age students with ADHD, and whether your child may need one, as well as the role of a school psychologist during the middle school years. While there is a lot of information out there about 504 and IEP plans, it can sometimes be confusing and overwhelming for parents to choose the right plan, ask for it, and implement it. So in this interview, Dr. Weyland will explain in detail what the IEP and 504 plans consist of, highlighting their differences and similarities, and how to assess whether your child needs one or the other or none. Naturally, she will also instruct us on how to get these plans and how to implement them with the school. She will also explain what is the essential role of school psychologists in caring for a child with ADHD and how to get access to these professions. So Majestic Vlogs just asked, does it work in the UK? Each country has their own education system, so not everything will be exactly relevant, but there's many strategies that are shared throughout all of these talks that apply no matter where you are. So it doesn't matter. And many of the talks on how to find an educational consultant or setting up strategy, using the right strategies to build those right accommodations, or what are the accommodations that should work based on a specific profile, will apply no matter where you are. All right, so that concludes day 2, another jam-packed day, and that pretty much covers everything: accommodations, academics, and homework. All right, day 3, relationships with family, marriage, siblings, and your school. So starting off with the heavy hitter, Melissa Orlov, the founder of ADHDmarriage.com, award-winning author and leader on how ADHD affects relationships globally. Her talk is titled Just Right: Creating a Relationship that Meets the Needs of Both ADHD and Non-ADHD Partners. Because generally where this becomes a huge issue is when non-ADHD partners don't understand how their ADHD partner's brain works, and if the ADHD partner doesn't know how to better self-regulate. So ADHD and non-ADHD people can be quite different in physiology, how they are in the world, problem solving, backgrounds, skill sets, and much more. Plus, there are ADHD symptoms and non-ADHD reactions to those symptoms. With all these differences, it can be hard to feel heard and valued within family relationships. In this session, Melissa Orlov will provide insights and tools based on over a decade of experience working with families affected by ADHD. These can help you create responsive relationships that accommodate the needs of the parent with ADHD without overlooking those of the non-ADHD family members. She will focus mostly on marital relationships while highlighting how these affect the children. She'll answer questions such as how much accommodation of ADHD is too much? How do you get our own opinions heard when you disagree? How can the family cope with the difficult behaviors of the partner with ADHD, and more. She's also one of the instructors of our online course on ADHD, as well as Dr. Sarah Wheeler, Dr. Daniel Kramarski, Dr. Sharon Celine, Dr. Sarah Allen, and Dr. Conchata Dakarya. And that's available in the ADHD Membership Plus plan. All right, next is Dr. Christopher Willard, a psychologist and educational consultant who teaches at the Harvard Medical School. He has been practicing meditation for over 20 years. He currently serves on the BOD at the Institute for Meditation and Psychotherapy and is the president of the Mindfulness in Education Network, author of Child's Mind, Growing Up Mindful, and Raising Resilience. His talk is Growing Up Mindful, Mindfulness, and ADHD. Dr. Willard's presentation will explore current research regarding how mindfulness builds emotional intelligence, increases attention and focus, minimizes stress, anxiety, and low self-esteem, and boosts happiness. Also, how mindfulness significantly enhances what psychologists call flourishing, a state of mind that encourages individuals to embrace life and not avoid it. We will discuss various mindfulness activities that may suit your teen based on his or her learning style, interests, and attention span. By the end of it, you will have the resources and tools needed to implement mindfulness activities for your student with ADHD. Next is Dr. Anna Vagan, really fun talk. She's a licensed speech and language pathologist with over 30 years of experience, the author of Movie Time Social Learning and UQ Feelings, online video viewing for social learning, as well as the developer of the Conversation Paths Pack. Her talk is entitled Play to Practice, Gaming for Social Learning. So families of students with ADHD are often looking for ways to support their students' learning at home, and using a range of games can add enjoyment to their efforts. Dr. Vagan's interactive presentation will explore how games can be engaging tools to help children with ADHD build their comfort level with uncomfortable feelings, become more resilient, gain perspective-taking ability, understand the feelings can change very quickly, and recognize that it's okay to make mistakes. We will discuss strategies that can increase appropriate risk-taking and help manage anxiety via role-playing, tabletop games, and video games. You will leave with lists of recommended games as well as visual supports for use to use in the moment to support your student. And something that was really awesome about the talk with Dr. Anna Vagan is, first of all, I'm sure many of you can relate to kids with ADHD just being absolutely wired to their video games. And the reason that is because video games are super dopamine inducing, and dopamine is addictive. And the more you trigger that dopamine, the more the child or student is going to want to keep doing that. And so if that's something that you can't avoid, because kids will either find ways to play at their friends' houses or whatever, and it's not a bad thing, you might as well use that time to build up social learning skills as well. All right, next is Debbie Rieber. She's a certified positive discipline trainer and a regular contributor to Psychology Today and Attitude Magazine. In 2016, she founded Tilt Parenting and has authored The Girl's Guide to Accomplishing Just About Anything, Language of Love, Chill, Stress Reducing Techniques for a More Balanced, Peaceful You, In Their Shoes, Extraordinary Women Describe Their Amazing Careers, and more than a dozen preschool books based on the series Blue's Clues. So her talk is entitled Acceptance, Self-Compassion, and Self-Care. Right now, millions of children are growing up in a world that doesn't respect, support, or embrace who they inherently are. These are children Debbie refers to as differently wired. The kids with neurodifferences such as ADHD, giftedness, autism, learning disorders, and anxiety, as well as those with no formal diagnosis, or being told day in and day out that there is something wrong with them. And because their differences are for the most part invisible, these kids are stuck trying to fit in a world that wasn't designed to accommodate their unique way of being. Their challenges are many, but for the parents who love them, their challenges are just as hard. They're the parents frequently fielding emails from frustrated teachers and dealing with glares when their children behave inappropriately in public. They're the exhausted moms and dads pushed into nonstop advocacy mode, the ones whose kids people think twice about inviting to their child's birthday party. They're overwhelmed, misunderstood, and isolated, which is ironic considering their kids are in every classroom across the country. Debbie knows this because she is one of those parents. More often than not, children's success starts with their parents. In order to even begin to think about how to provide their children with proper support and the best resources, parents must first accept their children as they are, formal diagnosis or not. From there, parents can take the steps to ease their own challenges and provide the structure needed for their kids to develop into the best people they can be. And I can't echo this enough. First of all caregivers have it hard in this case, parents especially, teachers especially. And you don't need to be so hard on yourself, and you don't need to be so hard on your kid. The easier you are, the more understanding you are, the more accepting you are, the easier everything is going to be. And like she said, right, like every kid, I mean, there's like 1 in 5 kids in the US that have learning and attention issues. 1 in 5. That's so many in our country. And to not be able to understand them and care for them correctly or appropriately is just ridiculous. Next, we've got Jeff Copper. He's an ADHD coach, founder of Dig Coaching Practice, and the host of Attention Talk Radio and Attention Talk Video. So he has another talk from day one that we already went over. This one is ADHD and motivation in teens, a love-hate relationship. Jeff Copper is going to define motivation, particularly among ADHD teens, and how it affects ADHD teenagers' engagement in many activities. What is motivation? Are your ADHD teens motivated or just lazy? What is ADHD anyway? Why can't ADHD teenagers engage in anything that doesn't interest them? These are the million-dollar questions for ADHD parents around the world. There is no magic bullet to get ADHD teens to do what they need to do. Finding ways to influence what they do can be challenging, especially if you have the wrong mindset. So in this discussion, Jeff Copper addresses the realities of ADHD, motivation, and how to set up your mind to influence ADHD teens as best you can so they can achieve what they are capable of. If you have an ADHD teen, listen in and get the insights you need to parent as efficiently and as effectively as possible. Really awesome time speaking with Jeff about that. All right, next is Lynn Idris. She's a productivity and ADHD coach and co-host of the award-winning ADHD Support Talk podcast. For nearly 15 years, she has helped adults from all over the world perform at the level of their abilities consistently so that they have more time, energy, and bandwidth for the things that matter most to them. She also has ADHD herself. Now, her talk is motivation and ADHD across the lifespan. So anyone who has lived with someone with ADHD knows that struggles with motivation can be very challenging and impacts every area of the individual's life, as well as those around them. In this presentation, Lynn Idris will help you understand the connection between ADHD and motivation, explore how motivation challenges show up throughout the lifespan of the individual with ADHD, and share practical evidence-based strategies you can use yourself and your team learn to use to create motivation when they need it, as well as improve their ability to perform at the level of their abilities more consistently in all areas of their life. Lynn will share models and tools you and your team can put into practice today to help them get going when motivation gets tough. And by the end of it, you will have the knowledge, tools, and resources you need to help your child be more successful in all areas of life, now and into adulthood. Next is Daniel Kramarski. He's a teacher, administrator, and parent with ADHD with an education career of over 30 years. He has taught at Teachers College at Columbia University and presented his work internationally at conferences on ethics and the philosophy of education. He and his daughter, now a student at a top-notch university, both have ADHD. His talk is entitled The Top 10 Biggest Fears for Parents of Kids with ADHD and How to Deal with Them. In this presentation, Dan will explain why you don't need to be afraid, not afraid that your child will fail, not afraid of ADHD, not afraid of medication, etc. Being afraid is bad for you and your child, and Dan will offer some concrete ways to deal with your fears. Dan will show you why there is no good reason to be afraid of most of these things, and if you're scared of your child's ADHD, your child will be scared of their own ADHD, and that's more difficult to handle than any of these fears by themselves. Next, we've got Jody Klugman-Robb. She's an LMFT, or licensed marriage and family therapist, focused on making strong connections with clients, and specializes in changing unwanted patterns in adult ADHD, trauma using EMDR, and parental identity discovery. Her talk is entitled The Highly Sensitive Person: What to Do with Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria. So rejection sensitivity dysphoria and the concept of a highly sensitive person are gaining momentum in the field of psychology, and that's owed largely to the impact they have made on the population affected by ADHD. This presentation examines the influence of rejection in sensitivity dysphoria and in highly sensitive persons with ADHD. Mood issues like depression and anxiety are exceedingly correlated to the highly sensitive person, therefore requiring direct clinical treatment. And the goal of this workshop is to help parents and other caregivers recognize mood issues like depression and anxiety, as well as to teach them about the clinical treatments available and other daily life strategies to help reduce the emotional toll of these issues. Next is Jeanette Patterson, also a licensed marriage and family therapist, over 30 years of experience offering individual, couple, and family therapy in nonprofit agencies and private practice. She specializes in learning disabilities, emotional disturbance, and ADHD issues in children and adults. Her talk is entitled Managing Emotional Dysregulation and Impulsivity in Middle Schoolers with ADHD. So this presentation will teach parents and caregivers of individuals with ADHD about the underlying dynamics of emotional dysregulation and impulsivity and how it manifests in maladaptive or dysfunctional behaviors. We will address stuck patterns in dealing with the resulting problematic situations and offer concrete strategies to address these behaviors in the individual. We will also practice communication and interaction skills to promote healing and improve responses to triggers and situations. In order to implement these coping methods, we will learn to be mindful and observant of our own thoughts and feelings so that we can respond appropriately. This session will discuss mindfulness as a personal practice, as well as how to help the individual with ADHD become more mindful. Next is Kim Cook, and this was a really important talk for me. I know it's taboo for a lot of people, but that's even more of a reason why I bring this stuff to the surface. So Kim Cook is a registered nurse and the founder of Teen World Confidential and Interventional Sex Education Day, author of Teen World Confidential, 5-minute topics to open conversation about sex and relationships. She also has recently launched a new professional organization called the Sex Education Alliance. Her talk is titled, Talk to Your Child with ADHD About Sex and Relationships. This presentation will talk about the barriers adults face when talking to kids about sex. Sexuality is a deeply personal topic, but we must face our own discomfort with this topic. Most importantly, caregivers must build a foundation of trust and love in order to have effective conversations about sex. You can build this foundation by being available, using humor, and by giving children room to grow. We will discuss some of the components of those conversations and how young people with ADHD may need additional support. Finally, we will review simple tips on how to get the conversation going with your kids. And by the end of our workshop, caregivers will feel empowered to start a conversation with your child. Conversation starters will help you get those conversations going. And the reason I found this so important and why I wanted Kim to come on is kids with ADHD are more at risk for things like unwanted or unplanned pregnancies. Because their risk profiles are just so much more tolerant, it's much more likely that they find themselves in those situations. And those could be things that completely change someone's life. So if those things can be avoided, much better to do it with a potentially uncomfortable conversation one time than to deal with the lifelong consequence, right? And so this talk is all about just making that easier so it doesn't have to be an uncomfortable conversation. All right, next is Dulce Torres. Dulce is a licensed mental health professional and a certified ADHD coach specializing in ADHD, anxiety, and depression. She's the founder of the Avant-Garde Center and ADHD Coaching and Training since 2011. And she's a member of the ADHD Coaches Organization, Attention Deficit Disorders Association, the Southern Region, and Texas Counseling Association and Hispanic Women's Network of Texas. Her talk is Self-Emotional Awareness for Families with ADHD. So we know executive functions are the mental skills we use to manage our daily life. They include working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. We know medication helps to create dopamine and norepinephrine in our brain that helps with focus, attention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. However, medications do not teach skills. In order for the student to maximize the potential benefits of the medication, he or she needs to understand what mental skills are their strengths or weaknesses, learning the strategies and techniques that will help me improve the areas of challenge and with daily practice and consistency. The student creates new habits for the rest of their life. So in this workshop, Dulce Torres will talk about the impact self-emotional regulation has in a person's life, i.e. at home, school, friends, socially. And Dulce will show us how to use a few tools to create self-awareness about our ADHD, how to regulate emotions by noticing our triggers, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and how to create an outcome action plan. And thus concludes day 3 of the summit. So moving on to day 4. All right. Day 4 is the tougher side of ADHD, comorbidities, and how to cope with them. So for those of you that are not aware, comorbidities are the kinds of disorders that can present themselves with ADHD. And since ADHD is highly comorbid, meaning it's almost never seen alone, so if you have ADHD, it's very likely that you have something else like depression or anxiety or SPD or ODD. It's really important to know what those comorbidities are, because when you get a formal diagnosis, first of all, you might be misdiagnosing ADHD because it could be some other symptoms. But also you want to make sure that if you're getting diagnosed for ADHD, you're also looking if there are any other factors that you need to be considering, because treating each of these is different. All right. So we start day 4 off with Dr. Jerome Schultz, absolute legend, clinical neuropsychologist at Harvard Medical School with nearly 40 years of experience in the field. He was the founding director of the Learning Lab, a diagnostic clinic at Lesley, and served for several years at Cambridge Health Alliance as the co-director of the Center for Child and Adolescent Development. This talk is entitled Middle School ADHD and Stress. And although it's focused on middle school, this applies throughout the lifespan. What to know and what to do. Dr. Schultz's presentation will explore current research regarding how chronic stress can adversely affect brain functioning, behavior, and emotions, and offer practical strategies to help kids become their own advocates and turn stress into the fuel for success. By the end of this enlightening and entertaining presentation, you will have a better understanding of how and why stress plays such a central role in your child's life in middle school. You'll also learn some simple and effective ways to help minimize the negative impact of stress and let your child's strengths shine through. Next, another legend, Dr. Roberto Olivardia. He's a clinical psychologist and lecturer in psychology at Harvard Medical School. He specializes in the treatment of ADHD, OCD, and BDD, an internationally recognized expert in eating disorders and body image problems in boys and men. His talk is Identifying, Understanding, and Supporting Middle Schoolers with ADHD and Depression. And again, it's focused on middle school, but this applies throughout the lifespan. 30% of individuals with ADHD have had a depressive episode. And if you have ADHD, your risk of developing depression is 4 times greater than it is for those without the disorder. Dr. Olivardia's presentation will explore what struggles and the risk factors that young people with ADHD have that can lead to depression. What are the signs and symptoms so that parents or caregivers can recognize early and act on it? We will discuss treatment interventions for ADHD and depression and also practice some of the evidence-based depression management strategies. By the end of it, you will have the resources and tools needed to address the risk factors of depression for students with ADHD. And can't stress the importance of that one enough in terms of taboo. Like, it's way better for you to know what's going on in your child's life if they're depressed than it is to avoid the subject. The last thing you want is for your child to be depressed or even suicidal and you to know nothing about it. So really, really important to bring that to the surface, make it okay to talk about, learn how to talk about it, learn how to see the early signs and symptoms by watching Dr. Olivardia's talk. All right. Next is Dr. Ellen B. Libman. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, a pioneer in the identification of gender differences in ADHD, co-author of the book Understanding Girls with ADHD, and contributing author of other numerous books. Her talk is specifically focused on understanding girls with ADHD. So for girls with ADHD, middle school marks a critical time in their development, and Dr. Libman's presentation will explore current research regarding why they're underdiagnosed. girls' unique development factors and unique pattern of functional impairments, what are the common experiences for girls with ADHD, and what are the risks? We will discuss and practice ways to help families empower girls and their families to cope with the symptoms of ADHD and give the girls support as needed. By the end of it, you will have a better understanding of the expectations, treatment plan, resources, and tools needed to support girls in facing the critical time of transitioning to young adolescents. Next is Carol Stock-Kranowitz. Carol is a teacher who learned to help her students with sensory processing challenges to become more confident and competent. She's best known for her first book in the Sync series, The Out of Sync Child. Her talk is titled, Helping Kids with ADHD and Sensory Challenges Get in Sync. So sensory processing disorder, or SPD, is a common problem that will have an impact on children's behaviors, especially their learning, relationships with others, and self-perception. However, there is often a misunderstanding about SPD and its relationship with ADHD. The truth is, about 40% of people with SPD also have ADHD. SPD causes over or undersensitivity to touch sensations, movement, sounds, and other stimuli. Sensory issues also prevent children from participating and enjoying daily activities both at home and at school. Today, one of the top experts in this area, Carol Kranowitz, will offer an effective approach for supporting kids and caregivers with overlapping disorders. In this presentation, you will learn about the sensory strategies for helping children with SPD and ADHD function better in problematic situations and for fostering more confident work at school. Next is a very popular man in the world of ADHD, Eric Tivers. Eric Tivers is a licensed clinical social worker, coach, podcaster, speaker, consultant, and entrepreneur in specializing ADHD. He is also the host of the #1 rated ADHD podcast on Apple Podcasts, ADHD Rewired. Promoting self-awareness, self-advocacy, and self-determination for less frustration and more success is the name of his talk. To quote from his website, he is one of the 15 million people in the United States that are living with ADHD. The hardest thing to accept about ADHD is the inconsistencies. The best thing about ADHD is how every struggle, every frustration, and every challenge has made him into a better person. As a child, his father sustained a significant brain injury that introduced major challenges in his day-to-day life. And this experience had a profound impact on Eric's life and taught him the importance of being aware of your disability, accepting your challenges, and speaking up for yourself. A student's disability is not what determines long-term life outcomes. Life satisfaction, quality of life, level of earnings, educational completion. It's their level of self-awareness, self-advocacy, and self-determination that makes the difference. And first of all, I had an amazing interview with Eric for the summit, and then he invited me on ADHD Rewired to interview me, and also had a great time with that. So I would highly recommend listening to both of those interviews. So we both had a blast. All right, next is Dr. Sarah Weyland, and probably like one of the most important talks that I could possibly recommend, because Dr. Weyland's view of solving this problem is exactly what we believe at Smart Course. So Dr. Weyland has a PhD in cognitive psychology and is a certified RDI, relationship development intervention consultant, and a special needs care navigator. She's been deeply involved with disability support organizations, including the ARC, the Parents Place of Maryland, the Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee in both Prince George's County and in the state of Maryland. Her talk is entitled, We Are All Part of the Treatment Plan, the importance of parents, doctors, and educators working in harmony. And so this is something that I want to put together specifically because at Smart Course, we believe that unless the parents, the educators, and the health professionals are working together, all together, collaboratively, it doesn't solve the root cause of the problem. And so understanding how each of these different caregivers interacts, like what they see, and how to talk to them and how to collaborate with them is necessary for everyone, right? Unless everyone does it, no one wins. So when a child is diagnosed with ADHD, their parents/caregivers must assume the role of a case coordinator. Because they will support their child throughout the child's journey from childhood to adulthood, they're concerned with the long-term view. They are also living with their child, navigating the day-to-day. During this interview, Dr. Weyland will talk about the different goals of members of your child's treatment team. Teachers are concerned with the academics that the child must master for the year. Parents are concerned with making sure their kids are able to navigate adulthood by the time they leave home. Clinicians are concerned with addressing the specific challenges they are trained to address. And doctors are thinking about how the child's disability will impact them over the long haul. Sometimes these goals conflict. What do team members need to know about each other's perspectives? How can we structure the conversation so the child gets the maximum benefit? After this conversation, you will have a framework for discussing your child in collaboration with other team members. And with this framework in place, you can maximize your child's ability to take advantage of the available supports. So yeah, I just wanted to put that together as one of the talks for this summit because it's the single most important thing as a caregiver you should know. And it's why we at Smart Course built this ADHD Summit to speak to parents, to educators, and to health professionals, all of the different caregivers that play a role in these kids' lives. All right, next is Dr. Alan Graham. He's the president of Advisor.com, dean of ADHD coach training for Mentor Coach. He coaches executives with business and organizational challenges and adults, teens, children, and parents impacted by ADHD. He served on the board of the Professional Association of ADHD Coaches and the editorial board of the Journal of Attention Disorders. His talk is entitled How to Build Resilience for Middle Schoolers with ADHD, but again, applies to other timeframes as well. So resilience is really important. And we commonly think of resilience as the ability to bounce back from adversity and misfortune, and that we either have it or we don't. Children with ADHD experience challenges to their sense of self on an almost daily basis, if not more, and their ability to bounce back is negatively affected. Research has shown that resilience can be learned. We all have the ability to build our resilience, and we can teach our kids to become more resilient. Our resilience is based on the stories we tell ourselves about the events that occur in our life. We create stories about ourselves, about others, and about events that occur in our environment. We can help build positive, resilient mindsets in our children. In this presentation, participants will learn the attributes that contribute most to resilience and learn and practice strategies that can be used to build these resilience attributes. All right, next we got Cindy Goldrich. She's the founder of PTS Coaching and Training, a mental health counselor, and a board-certified ADHD coach. She provides education, coaching, and support for parents, educators, and mental health professionals to help children with ADHD and executive function deficits find success. Her talk is entitled, How to Parent Especially Difficult, Oppositional, or Defiant Kids with ADHD. If you've been wondering what happened to my easygoing kid, now that they're in middle school, it seems like things are falling apart, this one's for you. And that could be for high school, that could be for even preschool, that could be for college, that could be for early career. In this interview, we're speaking with Cindy Goldrich to give you the foundation you need in order to start understanding how you can establish calm, improve communication, encourage collaboration, use effective consequences, and support your children in making better choices, especially for particularly defiant or difficult students with ADHD. So that's if there's a potential comorbidity with ODD, and also covering, whether to label ODD or with ODD or not. All right. Next is Caroline McGuire. She's a personal coach who works with children who struggle socially and the families who support them, and the founder of a new training curriculum at the ADHD Coaching Academy. Her talk is titled, Why Will No One Play With Me? Teaching Parents to Become Their Child's Social Skills Coach. Why is it hard for so many children with ADHD to make and keep friends? This workshop will introduce participants to the tools they need to become their child's social skills coach. Caroline McGuire will demonstrate the coaching process for participants based on her groundbreaking book, Why Will No One Play With Me, so that they can apply coaching techniques at home. Next is Rick Fiery. Rick is the co-founder of Inventive Labs, a research lab and business incubator that helps people with learning differences find their passions and take a gap year, explore careers, or create a new business in an all-accepting environment. So the talk is entitled College or Career Readiness, Why Your Child with ADHD Should Focus on Building the Skills That Matter. And I can't recommend this talk enough. This is a talk that I personally related to on so many levels. And is so important for parents to understand early on, because what really matters at the end of the day is is your child able to live independently, happily, and that's it. And happy could mean a lot of financial success, or average, or lower than average. It doesn't matter. The college that you go to, the grades that you get in high school, none of that matters unless your child is happy and independent, right? So this talk is all about focusing on those skills. So Rick will encourage parents to stop obsessing about college and start cultivating career readiness in their child with ADHD instead. He will talk about giving parents the tools they need to best support their child in whichever career they choose. Today's education is centered around college and around getting a degree from a respected institution. However, real-life career success is not determined solely by grades and diplomas, but also by passion, by thinking outside the box, and by perseverance. Although young people with ADHD tend to struggle in academic environments, there is absolutely no reason why they should not be able to have a stellar career in whatever they choose. In this interview, Rick Fiery is going to talk to us about the importance of changing our mindset from college readiness to career success when raising a child with ADHD. He's also going to teach us the necessary skills to help guide, encourage, and support children with ADHD in achieving a successful career. All right, next is Dr. Michael Meinzer. So he's assistant professor in the Department of Psychology and the director of the Young Adult and Adolescent ADHD Services Lab at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He's a 2016-2017 NIMH CHIPS Fellow and the 2016 recipient of the Young Scientist Research Award from Chad. His talk is entitled Co-Occurrence of ADHD and Depression, Prevention Strategies for Adolescents. Dr. Meinzer's interactive workshop will explore current research regarding how and why ADHD confers risk for depression. We will discuss and practice ways to help prevent depression among adolescents with ADHD in the context of Dr. Meinzer's ongoing randomized controlled trial. And then last speaker of day 4 is Dr. Arlen Rothman. She's an absolute vet in the field, licensed psychologist and professor emerita. She served as the founding director of Leslie's Threshold program and the first comprehensive university-based non-degree transition program for young adults with disabilities in the US, and has served on many national boards relating to learning differences and ADHD. Her talk is entitled Preparing High Schoolers with ADHD for the Transition to Life After High School. So we know that the symptoms of ADHD can often present real challenges to academic life through elementary and secondary school. We also know that in a variety of ways, those symptoms spill into life outside the classroom. A fact that grows more significant as youth work their way through high school and get ready to move on to their next steps within the community, at work, and or in post-secondary learning. This session focuses on how parents and other caregivers can foster the development of both self-awareness and skills that will help their children or students with ADHD meet with success as they venture beyond their high school years. Viewers will learn practical strategies they can begin to use right away. All right. Day 5, almost there, everyone. All right, day 5 is a killer day. Day 5 is definitely for any health professional out there. If you're taking care of kids with ADHD, you absolutely need to watch day 5 sessions. All right, the theme is medications, alternative treatments, and the ADHD brain. The first speaker is one of the most important experts on ADHD in the world, Dr. Edward Ned Hallowell, a child and adult psychiatrist, a New York Times bestselling author, world-renowned speaker, and leading authority in the field of ADHD. And like we covered earlier, his talk is about VAST, which is a new positive outlook on ADHD and how it will help your child with ADHD. So Dr. Hallowell introduces you to the world of VAST, Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. VAST is his new name for an expanded version of ADHD and the title of his next book that he wrote with his partner John Rady, coming out in 2021. VAST is for people who may not fit the exact diagnostic criteria for ADHD, but still can benefit from an understanding of what it is and from the various means of dealing with it that we've developed over the past several decades. Because Dr. Hallowell sees ADHD not as a disorder, but as a trait, he feels it is important to describe it in language that does not pathologize the condition. While ADHD can certainly be incredibly challenging, if it is taken care of properly, it can turn a person's life into a life of greatness, a life of joy, and a major contribution to the world. And in this talk, Dr. Hallel will explain what VAS consists of and how we can reframe the challenges of ADHD to change our perception of it for a more positive one. All right, I'm going to take a quick break just to look at the chat before moving on. All right, it looks like for now it's all good. Okay, next we have Dr. William Bill Dodson. He goes by Bill Dodson sometimes. Currently a consultant, speaker, and writer on adult ADHD medicine. He has written more than 100 articles and 10 webinars for Attitude, CHAD, and the NADDA over the years, and is on Attitude's board of scientific advisors and is a board-certified adult psychiatrist. He also is an advisor for us and has been incredibly, incredibly helpful. So he gives like the full big breakdown from start to finish on ADHD medications, how to decide whether to medicate and how to do it best. So if the decision to try ADHD medication was based on science and upon years of experience with these medications, the decision would be easy, but it is not. For most, the focus is on the fear and worry associated with medications and not with either the positives to be gained from medication or the considerable risks associated with untreated ADHD. And so it is so, so, so important for every parent to listen to this talk because there's so much stigma around ADHD medications, so much misinformation around ADHD medications that are dramatically negatively impacting your child's life in a way that is completely unnecessary. So just listen to the talk, look at the science, and make your decision from that. Don't listen to what random people are saying online. It has absolutely no bearing on your child's life. And it's a very dangerous way of going about treating ADHD. All right. Next is Dr. Stefan Hinshaw, also a legend. Stefan Hinshaw is a professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, and professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at UC San Francisco. His work focuses on developmental psychopathology, particularly ADHD, and mental illness stigma. He has authored over 360 articles and chapters, along with 12 books. Hinshaw has also won multiple awards in teaching and research. His talk is entitled ADHD Causal Factors, Mechanisms, Sex Differences, and Treatment Implications. This presentation will provide an up-to-date discussion of current thinking about ADHD, what's biological about it, what's more psychological in nature, what causal factors entail, and the role of both brains and contexts in shaping how ADHD looks in the world of youth. He will also discuss what this means for school interventions, parenting, and medications, and provide a more holistic, multimodal view of treatment and ADHD in context. Although parents and teachers want to do their best to help their children succeed, it is not always easy to find the best methods to do so. We will also discuss the important topic of girls with ADHD who remain understudied. Dr. Steve Hinshaw will also discuss the role of educational policy in fostering the potential for overdiagnosis. All of this will lead to discussion of optimal medication and behavioral treatments for ADHD, focusing on middle school and beyond. Dr. Lori Dizotel, amazing talk with Dr. Dizotel. She is a teacher, counselor, and now assistant professor at Butler University, where she created a certificate for applied educational neuroscience and leads a yearly educational neuroscience symposium. She is also the author of 5 books. Her talk is entitled Connections Over Compliance, the Adolescent Brain and Trauma. And although we cover trauma extensively, her talk is way, way more extensive than that. I mean, she covers way more. And it's so, so important, both from an educator's perspective and health professional's perspective, because she ties in what the science medically should look like in the classroom and for educators as well as parents. So Dr. Dizotel will explore brain development and how the impact of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and adversity affects learning, emotional regulation, and behaviors with our youth. We will also explore the regulatory and connection practices that begin to build resiliency in the adolescent years. The developing brains and bodies of our children and youth need to feel safe and to feel felt by others to experience social, emotional, physiological, and cognitive well-being. Adversity and trauma affect the developing brain and our stress response systems, leading to behaviors that may look disruptive, aggressive, shut down, or disrespectful. Children and youth that carry in chronic behavioral challenges are often met with reactive and punitive practices that can potentially re-traumatize and reactivate the developing stress response systems. So connections over compliance deeply addresses the need for co-regulatory and relational touchpoint practices, shifting student-focused behavior management protocols to adult regulated brain and body states, which are brain-aligned, preventive, and relational discipline protocols. This new lens for discipline benefits all students by reaching for sustainable behavioral changes through brain state awareness rather than compliance and obedience. All right, next we got Dr. William Stixrud, who's a clinical neuropsychologist and the co-author with Ned Johnson of the best-selling book, The Self-Driven Child. The science and sense of giving your kids more control over their lives. He is also a member of the adjunct faculty of Children's National Medical Center, as well as an assistant professor of psychiatry and pediatrics at the George Washington University School of Medicine. So his talk is entitled Why Autonomy is So Important for Kids with ADHD and Everybody Else. The wiring of kids with ADHD can make it harder for them to develop a healthy sense of autonomy or control over their lives, as do many of the ways in which we try to help them. For example, rewards for completion or telling them 10 different times, etc. Many adolescents with ADHD spend much of their incredible teenage energy trying to fight adults' attempts to help them behave and perform better, which is a terrible use of their energy. And Dr. Stixrud's presentation will summarize research on the relationship between a sense of control and adolescents' mental health and motivational development. He will then talk about why the development of a healthy sense of control is more challenging for kids with ADHD than it is for many kids. And most of the presentation will then focus on strategies caregivers can use for supporting autonomy. These include playing a consultative role with kids rather than the role of boss, manager, or enforcer, supporting kids in making their own decisions, lowering the stress/anxiety levels at home, building in periods of radical downtime to offset the effects of 24/7 engagement with technology, helping kids with ADHD develop an accurate model of reality that includes the important role that successful late bloomers play in our society. I really had an awesome time talking with Dr. Stixrud, and he's going to be helping us out in the future so much. All right, next is Dr. Dan Shapiro, someone else who shares our view on having all of the different caregivers working together. Dr. Dan Shapiro is a developmental behavioral pediatrician and a member of Attention's editorial advisory board. He is the creator and director of ParentJourney.com and the author of Parent-Child Journey, an individualized approach to raising your challenging child, a parent-child excursions with ADHD, anxiety, and autism. And he is a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and a member of the Society for Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics. His talk is entitled Uneven Medication Coverage and ADHD. And this is such an important topic because it's not talked about that much, and yet it's super, super, super helpful for anyone who's taking medications and not getting the results that they're looking for. So ADHD is common and potentially serious disorder of inconsistent self-control. Although medication is never the whole answer, it is usually an important part of comprehensive care. If side effects are avoidable, stimulant medications are usually effective. However, with each dose of medication, blood levels rise and fall in and out of the therapeutic range. And peak is when the medication is at its highest blood level. A trough is when medication is at its lowest blood level. These daily peaks and troughs yield uneven control. So focus and regulation may wax and wane. Ironically, the best treatment we have for ADHD, stimulant medication, is itself an inconsistent performer. In this presentation, Dr. Shapiro will talk about what uneven medication is, how to properly identify it, and trough filling strategies to help your child manage their symptoms. All right, next we got Dr. Conchata Dakarya, who is one of the instructors of our course as well. She's a clinical neuropsychologist with a specialization in children and adolescents and has been in private practice since 1997. She has provided academic and cognitive remediation, psychotherapeutic support, and evaluation services to hundreds of individuals with difficulties in learning, attention and regulation, behavior, social and emotional functioning. Her current practice focuses on diagnostic consultations and neuropsychological, psychoeducational, and psychological evaluation services. Her talk is Getting an ADHD Diagnosis, Why Your Child Needs One and How to Get It. In order to receive a diagnosis of ADHD, parents will have to consult a qualified mental health professional. This could be an external evaluator, pediatrician, school psychologist, social worker, or any other large group of professionals qualified to make the diagnosis. And as an experienced evaluator who has worked with hundreds of families, Dr. Dakarya will be your guide as to what is an external evaluation, what best practices are for evaluating children with ADHD, and other accompanying disorders, and what you can do about the results. By the end of it, you will have the information, resources, and tools necessary to determine if getting an external evaluation is worth it for you and your child. And what's really important about this is, if you remember at the very beginning of this live stream, I mentioned that around 50% of pediatricians fully admit to not being able to help ADHD specifically. So if you don't know yourself as the caregiver what you should be looking for in an expert and what the diagnosis should say, or what the person doing the diagnosis should know, then you're very likely, you got a 50-50 chance of landing on someone who actually doesn't know how to help. All right, next is Dr. Thomas E. Brown, absolute pioneer and legend in the field. He has earned his PhD in clinical psychology at Yale University and served on the clinical faculty of the Department of Psychiatry at Yale School of Medicine for 21 years while operating a clinic in CT for children and adults with ADHD and related problems. He has published 30 articles in professional journals and 6 books on ADHD, some translated into multiple languages. His talk is entitled Model for Understanding ADHD. So the transition from middle school to high school is exciting, but also challenging for adolescents. For students with ADHD, that transition is especially challenging because they are expected to take increasingly more responsibility for organizing and prioritizing their own work. In fact, some students who have been quite successful in elementary and middle school, possibly honor students, are recognized to have ADHD only when they encounter the increased self-management challenges of high school. Many people, including parents, teachers, and pediatricians, have an outdated understanding of ADHD. They think of it as simply a problem of kids who are hyperactive and not listening to what they are told, kids with behavior problems. That outdated idea has been replaced by a new understanding of ADHD and as an inherited delay in the development of the brain's self-management system or its executive functions. All right. Next is Lori Dupar. Lori Dupar is a trained psychiatric nurse practitioner, a 20-year veteran ADHD life coach, and director of the International ADHD Coach Training Center. Uses her unparalleled expertise in both the neuroscience and behavior management of ADHD to help people with ADHD thrive. So she's going to be talking about ADHD medication and middle school. So the middle school personal experience is a period of life uniquely defined, caught between childhood and adulthood. This is the age when hormones rage, social relationships change, responsibilities increase, and ADHD is often first diagnosed. An ADHD diagnosis can present answers for many who are struggling and a desire to understand treatment options to minimize symptoms for most. Although one of the most effective treatment options for symptom management includes ADHD medications, middle schoolers can challenge and undermine any simple medication options. Listen into this session as Lori Dupar, trained psychiatric nurse practitioner, 20-year ADHD life coach, clarifies the specific challenges that undermine effective use of ADHD medications for this age group and leave with understanding and specific solutions when it comes to approaching ADHD medication treatment. Now, I want to say, we definitely focus a lot on middle school in this talk, but it's a very useful talk to also understand all the types of ADHD medications that are out there that might be helpful. All right, 2 more. We've got Dr. Sarah Cheyette, who graduated cum laude from Princeton University in cognitive neuroscience and then from UCLA Medical School. She then did a fellowship in pediatric neurology and has been in private practice since then. She treats kids and young adults with ADHD not just with medication, but also with non-medication strategies, such as those she outlined in her book, ADHD and the Focused Mind. Her talk is titled, How to Give Your Kids a Positive Perception of Their ADHD and Have Them Want to Help Themselves. So in this interview, we're speaking with Dr. Sarah Cheyette to give parents the tools to help their child with ADHD change and their mindset so that they are compelled to take action on winning, so that they can see a way of improving and want to do so, and so they can keep going even when things get tough. So getting buy-in from your kid to want to help themselves is really, really important. All right, last speaker of the summit, Dr. Sarah Levin Allen, also one of the instructors of our online course. She's a certified brain injury specialist, the executive director of neuropsychology at Brain Behavior Bridge, and an adjunct faculty member at Drexel University. She's also a consulting neuropsychologist for Weissman Children's Hospital and consults for districts all over the state of New Jersey regarding brain-based programs, designs for public and private schools. Dr. Allen conducts research, teaching, and clinical neuropsychological assessments with a focus on neuroeducational programming for children in schools. Her talk is titled, Your Child's ADHD Brain, How It Works, What It Means for School Accommodations, and Making Your Child More Independent. In this interview, we're speaking with Dr. Allen to show parents how to understand your child's ADHD brain better, identify the primary issue your child is having based on their unique ADHD profile, identify the correct strategy to use to address that primary problem, figure out the different ways you can implement that strategy, and lastly, how to help your child be more and more independent in the process. So, children with ADHD are complex. While we know their brains work differently when they learn, we want to think about kids as more than just how they perform in school. Children learn and develop across multiple domains, how their bodies feel, how they think, how they behave, and how they're feeling, right? Dr. Allen will discuss how parents, teachers, and other caregivers can use an understanding of the brain to assess and implement interventions that match each individual child. First, we will talk about brain buckets, a concept Sarah developed to explain the different types of ADHD brains and how they must be balanced to promote healthy, happy, and successful children. We'll also talk about important brain patterns and how to connect that to interventions that will work for your child. And finally, we'll talk about how to ensure that your child can independently use strategies and perform better in school and at home. By the end, you will have a take-home guide to help your child build independence. So that covers pretty much everything in the ADHD Summit, upcoming starting tomorrow until February 5th. And if you haven't signed up for the ADHD Summit yet, please sign up as soon as possible. You can go to smartcourse.io/ADHD-Summit and sign up there for free for a limited time. All right. To thank everybody who has stuck with us all the way to the end here, I'm going to share with you a special offer that we have. So if you haven't heard of ADHD membership yet, ADHD membership is a product that we've created to give you ongoing access to not only all of the recordings of the summit, but also all of the action guides, worksheets, handouts, anything that's going to make it really easy for you to take action on every single masterclass so that it's not just some webinar you're looking at and goes one ear, goes out the other, but something that you can actually act on to change your life in real time. And so if you haven't looked at ADHD membership, please go to smartcourse.io/ADHD-membership. And if you're already on the live page, or the live kickoff page on our website right now, you should see there's a button that says get the plus plan now, or get the ADHD membership plus plan now. So if you go and click on that button, it should bring you to the ADHD membership page. And once you're on that page, you should click on join now for the ADHD membership plus plan. So currently there should be, if it's your first time seeing it, a one-time offer on the plus plan. Or if you've already exhausted that offer, you should be seeing the early bird price because that's still available until February 3rd, 2021. So Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. But having stayed all the way to the end, we want to reward you by offering you what's called a fast action bonus on the plus plan for ADHD membership. So only now until it's currently 6:08 p.m. ET. So for the next 15 minutes from now, if you buy the Plus plan while using the coupon code ADHD Summit FAB, that's ADHD Summit FAB, you can get any product. I mean, it doesn't have to be the Plus plan. It could be any product that you want of ADHD membership for 50% off your first payment. So if you're looking to save a significant amount with a yearly subscription, you could save 50% off that yearly subscription for the next 15 minutes. So I highly encourage you to do that if you know that this is something of value, if you want access to these experts and you want to use this content to actually change your life. You should join ADHD membership without a doubt. And if you do it right now, you're going to benefit substantially in a financial way. So I'll put that in the chat here so everyone can see. But again, this will no longer be available for anybody at 6:25 p.m. ET. That will be the cutoff point. All right, so while everyone goes through that, I'm going to go ahead and answer questions that have accumulated throughout the live. All right, so Deb Quell asks, how can I help my kids with attention problems and social issues? So Deb, if you've been listening this whole time and you're still here, what I'd recommend is definitely checking out the talks with Caroline McGuire for social skills specifically. And then for attention problems, really every single speaker will be able to help with that. Next, Linda, a school social worker wanting to support students, asks, how can I help students with impulse control? Where can I learn good strategies to administer tests for students with ADHD? So impulse control is very similar to what executive function. And so, the talks with Dr. Peg Dawson, the talk, pretty much every single talk of day one is going to be talking about impulsivity and as an executive function. And it looks like I'm getting a little dark here. 1 second. So I would definitely recommend looking at day one sessions for impulsivity related things. Probably day 4 as well with Cindy Goldrich, as she covers particularly defiant struggles. And then learn good strategies to administer tests for students with ADHD. Now, I'm not sure what you mean by tests. It could be if it's a diagnosis, then definitely listen to the talks with Dr. Paul Yellen as well as Dr. Conchata Dakarya. If you're talking about tests in school for kids to take, I would definitely recommend the talks with Dr. William Stixrud, Ned Johnson as a tutor, and Dr. Lori Dizatel. All of them really great information on that. Lara asks, how can I best navigate remote school? My son is not able to sit still and focus for any amount of sustained time. Well, Dr. Manju Banerjee and Dr. Adam Laylor of Landmark College covered online learning extensively, so definitely watch that. And for your son not being able to focus for any amount of sustained time, that's an issue with potentially medication, potentially behavior therapy. So I would recommend all the talks on medication. That's with Dr. William Bill Dotson, nurse practitioner Lori Dupar, and Dr. Dan Shapiro. Because what it could be is that the medication wears off during one of the troughs of the day, and you're just not realizing it, or that you're not medicated, and maybe that could be very helpful. Isabella asks, what are good strategies for time management and organization? So Leslie Josell, with her tool for time management, super, super helpful. Same with Andrea Elrome when it comes to homework. Organization as a whole is just difficult for executive function deficits. So looking at the talks in day 1, as well as the specific talks on organization in day 2, should be able to help you out, Isabella. Kristen asks, how can I best help a brand new 6th grader who is learning how to juggle multiple teachers, classes, and homework assignments? Yeah, so definitely watch the talks on the transition to middle school and working with in middle school. So Dr. George DuPaul, Dr. Stephen Evans, Christine Kotick, right? All of those are really relevant to brand new transition to middle school. And the other thing I would say to you, Kristen, is self-compassion, self-acceptance. Debbie Rieber had a really great talk about that. Eric Tivers had a really great talk about that. The best thing you can do is just be there for your child, listen to your child, be open, and hopefully, keep that bridge of communication open so that they're honest and they can tell you what they're struggling with and you can help. All right, Marianne asks, how can people with ADHD learn to not see themselves as abnormal and limited and instead feel confident with their ADHD diagnosis? So this is a really sad reality with ADHD that I think is so silly, because kids with ADHD are some of the most creative and driven people in the world. So for you, Marianne, what I would say is use a strength-based approach. And this is something like almost every single caregiver will recommend as well, because there's no reason to focus on the things that are challenging, instead to focus on the things that they're good at and double down on those. No one is good at everything. And that is true for everyone. So there's no point in making your child feel as if they're abnormal or limited when they have such great strengths, right? So if their peers are labeling them that way, or teachers or themselves, just building up that sense of confidence and understanding for them by focusing on their strengths is really going to help. On top of that, it's a virtuous cycle at that point, because the more they focus on their strengths, the more they do better in things, the more confident they feel, and the cycle repeats. Plus, all the things that they'll be accomplishing in their lives are going to be really impressive to the people around them. And so if they're misjudging them as limited or abnormal or whatever in any way, that'll stop very quickly. All right. So there are many questions on how to help with procrastination, and the talk on motivation with Jeff Copper is really pertinent to that, as well as Lynn Idris. And it on the surface it looks like procrastination, but really what it is motivation. At the end of the day, like if you go a layer deeper, it's the struggle with motivation that causes the procrastination. And that in itself goes deeper in that there are fears associated with the motivation, right? Like, well, if I get started, if I get started, I might fail, and I don't want to fail, and I don't know if I can do this, and so instead of facing that reality and overcoming that fear, kids will put it off, right? And so will adults. So it's very normal to feel that way, and understanding the underlying reasons that are hidden behind the procrastination is how you're successfully going to be able to address that. All right, Kelechi asks, how do you convince your partner that it's time for our child to get on medication? Yeah, this is a tough question. I'm sure a lot of people are struggling with this, and I'm glad you asked. So the harsh reality is, and I mentioned this before, there's way too much misinformation around ADHD medications out there. If you look at the science, if you listen to the experts, they will tell you that 80% of kids with ADHD can be effectively treated with medications alone, just medications, like not even any kind of behavioral therapy or whatever, just medications. And so having that talk with your partner and showing them the science and showing them doctor after doctor after doctor after scientist after doctor that is saying the same thing is like an irrefutable truth. Like there's no way you can argue with that. Now, the bigger issue that your partner is probably experiencing is the fears, right? They've probably been misinformed about the medication because there's plenty of conspiracy theories and plenty of people online putting out a bunch of misinformation around this. So it's, you know, pretty easy to fall into that trap. So what you're going to have to do is speak to those fears, right? The science is great, but really it's going to come down to how can you connect with your partner emotionally in a way that they see that you understand their fears around this, right? They might think like, you know, medication doesn't work at all, and I don't want my kid to be labeled, or, you know, medication is going to cause some horrible side effects and they're going to be worse off, or, you know, I don't even know what the cost is of this medication. I don't want to have to deal with that, right? There's plenty of other fears around it. And you're going to need to like do some questioning to ask what those fears are before you're able to address them with your partner. All right. So a lot of people have asked when they will receive a schedule of the speaker/topics and if this kickoff will be available for later viewing. So for the schedule, yes, the schedule is available right now. You can go to smartcourse.io/ADHD-summit or smartcourse.io/ADHD-summit-agenda. And that has all of the dates and times for every session. Will this kickoff be available for later viewing? Yes, it will be available for later viewing. However, the fast action bonus will only be available right now, again, until 6:25 p.m. ET. So there's about 5 minutes left for that. Okay, so looking through. So some other questions. How can I help my son improve his ability to focus on information during lectures? I mean, this goes hand in hand with the online learning talk. So again, Dr. Manju Banerjee, Dr. Adam Laylor on online learning. More importantly, and this is something you're going to want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our email list, because this is the problem that we're trying to solve with technology. So, you know, keeping videos as engaging as possible with, you know, clever video editing and animation is a key to maintaining that engagement and staying focused throughout lectures. And that's something that we're going to be working on a lot. So just looking at what we do is going to answer that question as well. Other questions? Okay. How can you help a smart, anxious, and impulsive student with ADHD and low self-esteem manage the emotional issues that he has to deal with in middle school, i.e. peer pressure/bullying, organizational and executive functioning skills, multiple teachers and teaching styles, changing classes, assignments and due dates, and so on? All right, so there's a lot here. I'm going to try to break it down. All right, so smart, anxious, and impulsive student, low self-esteem, emotional issues in middle school. So peer pressure and bullying is something that will always be there in school, no matter what. The best thing that you can do to counter that is by building a sense of confidence in your child. If you're confident, if your child feels confident, they won't feel the need to succumb to their peer pressure because they feel good about themselves. They don't need to belong any more than they already do. And so focusing again on their strengths, reinforcing the things that they do well, all of that is going to help build their sense of confidence. Now, for further resources on that, right, Dr. Adam Alan Graham on resilience will be a very helpful talk on that. Dr. William Stixrud on being independent and maintaining a sense of control will be helpful with that. Dr. Sarah Cheyette on having a positive outlook and focusing on strengths with ADHD and getting buy-in from your child to help themselves will help with that. Now, bullying is its own issue. That's a separate thing that, there is no way to stop other than what the school does itself. I mean, especially with cyberbullying. So, the best thing you can do is, again, just focus on that confidence building so that even when bullying happens, it's not detrimental. Obviously, if it's physical bullying, then you have action or you have to speak with the school about that for them to discipline however they see fit. All right, then organizational and executive functioning skills. So all of these are covered in day one. That I think should be pretty clear. Multiple teachers and teaching styles. Now, this is really, really important to understand, and I'm glad you brought it up. You as a parent will have a much, much easier time if you have a good relationship with your child's teachers. If you look at your teachers and they don't like your kid for whatever reason, or they give your kid bad grades for whatever reason, and you react to that in a negative way, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot even more. So although that's challenging, and although there are teachers who are not looking out for the best interest of your child and they don't know how ADHD works and any of that, that is true. Those people exist. You still need to look at it as the primary advocate for your child. And that means it's now your responsibility to help that teacher as well. So even if you don't like them, you got to find it in yourself to be able to educate them, maybe point them towards our resources, do the work yourself and come to meetings prepared so that you can say like, hey, I know how hard teaching is, and I understand how much my child is struggling, and I really want to be able to help you or help him or her in any way that I can. So I've gone ahead and I've done some research, and here are some things that I found that maybe you'll find helpful, right? You don't want to tell them how to do their job. You just want to be there as a source. And the more you present yourself as an expert or someone that gives great advice, the more they're going to listen to you, the more they're actually going to implement what you say. And so doing that with multiple teachers and their different teaching styles is the way to solve that problem. Because really, there's no way of getting around it. Middle school has more teachers than elementary school. And that will always be the case because there's more subjects to cover. Changing classes is something to do with organization / transitions, right? So maintaining focus, being really, really organized with your physical tools, whether that's a binder or a planner or whatever, is going to help with changing classes. Having good relationships with the teachers of these other classes is going to help a lot. Assignments and due dates and so on, that again comes down to homework. It comes down to planning and organization. Leslie Josell, Andrea L. Rome, Dr. George DuPaul, Stephen Evans, all of those speakers, and during the day 2 academics, accommodations, and homework will help with those. All right, so it's now 6:26 p.m. ET, which means that the fast action bonus has expired. I hope some of you took advantage of it, and I'm so glad you were all here and able to stick through all the way till the end for the live kickoff event. It means a lot to us. I really hope you enjoy the summit. We've got so many speakers. We've put in so much work to get this together for all of you. If you aren't already subscribed to the summit, please subscribe to the summit. Go to smartcourse.io/ADHD-summit, and you will receive emails about how to access all of these seminars over the next couple of days, starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So anyway, thanks so much again. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was long, but thanks for sticking it out, and wish you all the best. I will see you soon. All right. Bye, everybody.